These are the things that, that can't be taken from us. So we've had our land taken from us. We've had our culture taken. We've had our children taken. We've had our flag taken. So all of these things that others seem to think that this is what, if we take all of these things away, but deep down inside, it's our spirit and our belief in ourselves and who we are.
See how that lifts up?
Yeah.
So the Wright brothers discovered this and they got all the glory. But the First Nations people of Australia already had this technology.
Yes.
10,000 years ago. And they never received proper recognition for it.
There's one person in particular that I can share with you who's a very prominent person who asked about their dreaming, and I said, well, you're an eagle. What does that mean, Aunty Peggy? So I said, well, an eagle represents power. An eagle also is about helping others that are less fortunate. He said, but I have to tell you something else. When I got in the car, someone was at the airport to meet me. When I got in the car, I felt something was behind me, but there was no one else in the car.
Amazing.
When he looked in the back seat, there was a picture of an eagle.
Amazing.
And I said, what does that mean to you?
Assalamu alaikum to you all. Peace be unto you all. I would like to acknowledge that we're on the lands of the Yagara people, and I pay respect to the elders past, present and future. We would also like to acknowledge the custodianship and continuing cultural connection with country. I would like to also extend the respect and acknowledge other First Nations peoples of Australia, whether they're here today or they're listening online and viewing this afterwards. Today, we are very honored to welcome a First Nations leader, a First Nations elder, who is here with us today, a great storyteller, I'm told. And she will share with us her stories, as she's done so already. I will introduce her in a minute. You know her already so far. And we're recording this as a podcast under Muslims Down Under podcast, so that we can share the learning that we have today with others who cannot join us today. In the past, we have had other personalities, great personalities, such as First Nations Senator Patrick Dodson. And with these words, it is an absolute privilege, and with the permission of our dear Auntie, I would like to acknowledge and welcome Aunty Peggy. Assalamu alaikum, peace be with you. And with your permission, we can start to Avian.
Peace be with you.
Thank you, Auntie. So first question, Auntie, with your permission, would you be open to sharing a bit about yourself, your people, where you're from? I know you've presented a bit from your presentation, something that you can add, and your journey as an elder and community voice.
Yes, thank you very much for that question. So my story starts with very humble beginnings, like many of our people have. Growing up in a small country town, probably about 1,500 people, and we lived on the riverbank of the Maranoa River. I was born on the banks of the river because in those days, many of our women, our mothers, did not birth in hospitals. And so I grew up on my traditional land with strong cultural values, strong parents, and being able to, I think, feel that I was able to do the things that I chose to do. And that stood me in good stead. I was always told, get yourself a good education. And that is exactly what I did. So growing up in a small country town, there was no employment for young First Nations people. And so quite often we had to leave our homes and go and seek employment outside. And I was very fortunate that I did that because I met my husband. So coming to Brisbane was a time for me where I could actually have a better understanding of what the outside world was like. I had no idea what existed outside a small country town. And so for me, it was a cultural shock in more ways than one, I would say. But I thank my parents for giving me the strength to be able to follow my path and to where I am today. So family is very important. Culture is very important. And if people would ask me how to identify, how do I identify myself, I think it's important for us to know who our people are, our culture, our language, and our land. So I know those things, where I come from. They are the things that make me who I am today.
Thank you for sharing that, Auntie. And just a little follow-up on leaving your small town and going to the biggest city. How, and you've explained, but how did that feel for you, going into sort of a foreign place and knowing that you are from a different place? Did that help to connect you and strengthen your connection to your nation?
Well, when I left home, it was very much a new learning for me. And coming to a larger city, I was subjected to racism. The level of racism that I encountered outside of my hometown was far worse when I came to the city. And if it wasn't for some of my extended family being here, it would have been far more difficult for me to be able to look after myself, because I think when a lot of our people left those reserves and came to the city or outside to look for work, if the work wasn't there, then they would return back to their families. And a lot of our people would find themselves in that situation. But once I came to the city, I had supports, and my family, my sisters and extended family were there to support me. But it was different. It was very different. I remember, even though I did well at school and I wanted to become a stenographer, when I applied for work in the city, I was immediately overlooked. Immediately. Even though I would make a call and say, yes, come in for an interview, that quite often didn't happen because we just weren't able to find that work. The lack of acceptance of our people, I would say, was one of the things that I found pretty damaging.
And that journey then helped to mould you, to inspire you to speak up for your community, those experiences, yes?
For me, it was always about my people and how I could help our people. One of the first jobs that I was accepted in was working with the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Legal Service in Brisbane from the very beginning. In 1972, when the Whitlam government gave funding to First Nations people to set up their own services, we were able to look at setting up a legal service, because prior to that, the incarceration rates of our people were just overwhelming. And I found that when I went to work with the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Legal Service in Brisbane in the late 70s, that was a time when we could start to see where we could make changes, that we could represent our own people in the legal system. And if I can just share with you, when we first started to look for, the story is, I wasn't there at the time, but the story was that our elders were looking for an office space, and they thought, we'll knock on every door to see if someone will help us. Every door they went to, the answer was the same, no. And one of the uncles said, this is the last one. He knocked on the door and said, could you please help us? And this solicitor said yes. He was the first solicitor to work with us, and probably about 3 months ago, he passed away. He stayed with us all that time from the 70s right through until 2025. We saw big changes that were helping our people to navigate the legal system. They were big changes for us. And I was I'm thankful I was a part of that, because it taught me a lot too, how to stand up for my own rights.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Aunty. You've shared plenty with us already in terms of your presentation, so thank you. But just in terms of, some of us are not very familiar with First Nations culture. And the benefit of today is really about learning as much as we can from you. Just in a nutshell, what is something essential about your identity and way of life? What would you consider is essential as a First Nations elder? What is essential as an identity for your way of life?
It's our land, where we come from. That is the most important thing to us, is we know where we come from, that we can always go back there. Over time, that has been interrupted through colonisation, through policy, through all of these changes over the last 250 years. But whenever we come in contact with someone, we always ask, where are your people from? As I said before, some people still use that word mob, but for me, it's about us as a people. Where do your people come from? And we can then connect with them. So we have a system that recognises, as First Nations people, that we still have our culture intact. These are the things that, that can't be taken from us. So we've had our land taken from us. We've had our culture taken. We've had our children taken. We've had our flag taken. So all of these things that others seem to think that this is what, if we take all of these things away, but deep down inside, it's our spirit and our belief in ourselves and who we are.
Thank you, because I think that ties in, and I'm glad you mentioned spirituality there. The land, the culture, spirituality, it's all so entwined, as you say. You can't remove one.
Can't remove it, no.
It has to all come together.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so I myself as a spiritual healer, I have been gifted the ability to work with other people around their spiritual healing. And it's giving them back their own identity and their pride in who they are. Mm-hmm. And to be able to search for the truth, their truth, and to be able to put their lives back together so that they can be with their people again. But we have, the system that has been in place has impacted on so many of our people that many people are still trying to find their way home, and that is working together, because sometimes we can just hear a name and we know that name. We can put them in contact with family. So our system works.
And the systematic disconnection was part of that strategy to break your people?
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
So if you were taken from, my grandmother had, her two brothers were taken from our traditional land. One was sent up to Palm Island, and the other one was sent to a reserve outside of Rockhampton, Woorabinda. They were taken there in the 1930s to a place where they knew no one and they couldn't speak the language. Just as migrants might come here, don't know anyone, can't speak the language. But it's how you come together and support each other that builds that confidence, to be able to move forward.
Okay. In terms of colonisation, and you talked about in your presentation the whole history, but is there something within that you think that even as a migrant community or even as everyday Australians, that we should know more and understand better? Is there a particular aspect of colonisation apart from the disconnecting with the land and culture? Is there something in particular do you think we need to understand better?
It's hard to say one.
Sure. Yeah.
If there's one thing, but it's for others to get to know us as a people and not rely on artificial intelligence, as I would put it. So I often hear people who come into the country as migrants and ask them if they know anything about our people, and quite often the answer is no. And in the citizenship ceremony, I believe that there's only a couple of questions that relate to First Nations people. Other than that, migrants, I think, have the opportunity to go and find out that information for themselves. The government may not provide it for you. Okay. So it's how you can relate yourself to other cultural groups. I do a lot of work in the multicultural community, a lot of work, and that is bridging that gap of how we can start to work together to make Australia a better place.
And in terms of the ongoing challenges, and you touched on a number of them, for First Nations communities, how can we as a collective be more aware and support in practical ways to overcome those challenges?
I think like working with my brother, Ibrahim,
Yeah.
and he is my brother. So just getting to know each other and having that shared understanding of the difficulties that many cultures experience when they first come here. For our people, we've never left here. We don't have that pleasure or that opportunity to say, I'm going to go to another country to live because it's better somewhere else. We would like other people to be able to work and walk alongside us. And we know that this has been happening with recent disasters here with the floods and the fires, where we saw the migrants come to our communities and help us. So I think there's a relationship building process that we can start to share that and work together. And it's through, I think, too, the education process.
Sure.
Because when we can share this information through education, I think we have more opportunities for our younger people to be able to have that understanding of, how to work together and help.
And these initiatives, these efforts, the migrant communities and the multicultural communities coming together, being allies to First Nations peoples and in practical ways helping. those are the efforts that you'd like to see more of?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like having this beautiful place here. We don't have these things. It's like having schools that we can say, yes, I think we have one school in the whole of Brisbane that is specifically for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander young people, maybe because they can't manage in the mainstream education system, and they do have an alternative. But if I was to go further and say employment, our people find it hard to get employment. Our people find it hard to get housing. The health system. We have the most chronic illnesses of any population in this country, First Nations people. But I will say that during the COVID era, when that was happening, the government thought that First Nations communities would be impacted. They would be basically wiped out. COVID would affect them. What we found and what the government found was because our people went back to community and stayed there, there was less chance of them contacting COVID, and we came through pretty good. So it has its advantages as well.
Yeah. All right. So COVID aside, are there any current initiatives that you think is working and that we need to do more of? So I mentioned those ones, but even perhaps from the government side or anything else that you think is currently that's working that we need to give more support to?
Well, basically everything, but I think Ibrahim and I went to the Logan NAIDOC celebrations in early July, and I think that Ibrahim could see the level of involvement that our community has in moving forward with, right across that social justice area. Mm-hmm. And the more that we can come to terms, or we can work together more. I mean, I think I'm quite comfortable coming into other multicultural events, but I think there are quite a lot of our people that really still do find it difficult. So having things like this where we can come together and share, but it's around, employment. We have very few businesses that can support our people. We have the health system does make a difference. The police service, better relationships with the police. And our people don't just look at making the problems. We look at solutions as well. So with the Queensland Police Service, we have regular meetings with the police at a community level, and we have police liaison officers that now fill that role. But the first police liaison officer employed in Queensland by the Queensland Police was one of our people, because we said we have far too many of our people being incarcerated. How can we work together to reduce that? We had the first teacher aide in schools was one of our people.
Okay. So just leading on from that, as Muslims, so we're a Muslim community, we're a migrant community. You've talked about how we can build those relationships. And is there, have you, apart from the example that you're seeing with us here today and the disaster reliefs, are there other examples you've seen of migrant communities working as allies with the First Nations peoples that you think we could do more of?
Well, I went I am involved with the Islamic Women's Association in Slacks Creek. I'm a member. I think I'm still a member. But I like to go and share my culture with the women. And we can sit down and have those conversations. But I think it's also about, the males. So can you put your hand up if you've got Aboriginal friends or someone? Any idea? Yeah?
Good representation, yeah.
Okay. So that gives you a bit of an idea of how we can start to move forward with some of those initiatives, that we have some of those events. And I think, for our people, are the Muslims more cricket or what are they?
It
Do you
depends.
like cricket?
It depends what type of Muslim you are. If you're African, it's probably soccer.
So for a lot of our people, it's football,
Yeah.
So the gatherings that we have. But, I think there's some opportunities there where we can join together in cultural ways that starts to build those relationships.
Wonderful. And if I can give our ladies a plug too, they'd love to be with your company. And please join our women as well. And
Yes,
sure
I'm
enjoy the
looking
company.
forward to it. But as I said, I was invited by the Islamic Women's Association to come and do an acknowledgement, and I stayed there.
Nice.
I became a member.
Wonderful. And just, you've already given the advice to migrant communities of what we need to do and build those healthy relationships. Language, as you've talked about, is sacred both to your people as well as to migrant communities, as you can appreciate. And how can we support your language revival, if I can use it in that way, for your people? What can we do as a migrant community to support you?
Excuse me. I think that there would be opportunities, I think through art, really.
Yeah.
I think through art that we can share the conversations around, and I've had the conversations with Ibrahim around how I can read art from an Aboriginal perspective and what does that story mean. But I would really love to learn about, the Muslim art, if I can call it that, but, the art from other cultures, because we all have specific meanings behind art. I think I need the question again.
Yeah, so
but
language. So we have found in our experience that encouraging our people, more migrant people, to learn the local First Nations language is a healthy way, we found, to support the language. In that way, we're supporting the culture and appreciation. Would that be something that you agree with?
Yes, because Gungari language, actually, our language is intact. Our traditional language is written. It's taught in the school in Mitchell, so all kids learn it. It's more difficult, I think, where you can move around the country. If there are no speakers there, then it's harder.
Sure, yes.
So I think if we can start to look at language, even if it is in a small way, even just welcoming people in language.
Yes.
I think that's really important, because if you're somewhere in society or wherever and you can say hello to someone, they know you know how to speak my language. So if you say you walla to me, I know you speak my language.
Okay. So coming to language, we've got some questions from the floor.
Okay.
I'm just going to just ask a few with your permission. There is one question about language, and it's from Abdul Salam. He says, Auntie, how do you say auntie in your language, in Gungari language?
In the Gungari language?
Auntie, how do you say auntie?
It's a hard one because sometimes we say umbi, which is woman, but we can sometimes use that for auntie. So we say umbi. We know they're saying auntie, or in our culture that's a female, a woman. Umbi.
And that's
just umbi for young ones.
Yeah.
Umbi.
And for the elder umbi, how do you say that? So the more
that
senior?
would be a different language, but we'd have to go back and check that.
Okay.
So my husband knows some of the language as well, because he'll hear me say language and he knows what I'm saying.
In terms of hope for the future, what gives you hope for both First Nations and non-First Nations people? And what do you look forward to for the future for your people?
We would dearly love, we talk about equality. We do talk about it, but I think Australia is far from equality. And when we can understand what true equality is about, then I think we can say that we're living in a much more, broader society that is acceptable of everyone. This year's NAIDOC theme actually talks about what our legacy will be for our young people, but it's also about what your legacy will be for your young people. What legacy do you want them to take forward? Because once we as elders go, that whole library of resources and language and everything goes with us if we don't share it. So I think it's really important how we can share that language. And I know that, just looking here today, that's very much embedded in your culture. The young ones are always with you, and in our case too, we like to have the young ones with us.
Okay, I've got a few more questions.
Oh, there's a few.
Tons of questions, so let's go through a few of these. Thank you, Aunty. My question is, what do you think are the barriers for people like us, the migrant community, for example, to be aware of the injustices that First Nations people face? What are the barriers for our understanding of the injustices that have been...
Ignorance. A lot of people are very ignorant of other cultures, but Australian society has been broadly built on the English history, and that is a lot of the things that we face is the same thing. Is language. How we try to raise ourselves, I suppose, bring ourselves up to a level where we can function at the same level as every other Australian. But we are still working towards how do we get to that level.
Okay, work in progress. Thank you for your question. We have another few questions. Let's put these together. One of the questions is, what is Aboriginal dreaming? But before you answer that one, there's another sort of associated one. It says, is there any religion that First Nation people follow? If so, then what is that religion? So I think they're quite entwined with dreaming.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
We don't have a religion as such. We are spiritual. Our belief is spirituality, where we come from. We recognise that others have their beliefs, their spiritual or cultural beliefs or religious beliefs, and that is probably because of the area that they come from.
Sure.
But for 65,000 years, our spiritual beliefs were our main beliefs that were linked to the land, to our culture. And I think what I mentioned before is our identity, is that when we lose one of those, we don't know our identity, or we don't know our traditional lands, who our people are, then our spiritual beliefs start to be impacted. So we don't go into a place of worship as others do. Ours is paying respects and acknowledging everything around us, all living things and all spaces around us. So the mountains and the rivers so we don't have we have our creator as the rainbow serpent.
And Biami, I think.
Yes, some people have taken on that belief.
Okay.
whereas others may be different.
So we had one question about the rainbow serpent, and I think you've just addressed that one. How many, the question, and part of our language, we're not always familiar with the correct language to use.
Mm-hmm.
So this question comes, how many tribes? Okay, so I think the question is, how many nations are there, First Nations groupings in Australia, Terra Australis? Maybe the IATSIS map. And
we have a language map that was actually drawn up by a non-First Nations person who we can look at it and say that's not right, where they put the boundaries. And we know our boundaries because they're landmarks, so mountains or creeks or rivers but there would be there are 750 different language groups, so we don't all speak the same language. Is that your...
Yes.
Is that your sense as well, or your people? You have more than one language?
Yes. If you look at the different parts, for example, let's just take Africa as a continent.
Yes.
They all speak very different languages. If you look at the Indian subcontinent, there's 1,000 dialects and 1,000 other different languages.
Yes, so my father spoke 5 different dialects. So that was for trading purposes. So you had to know who your neighbours were to be able to trade.
This is a nice question. How do you say your name in your language?
Oh, I don't know. I wouldn't have a clue.
And the follow-up question is, can you explain the totems? Possum, emu. I appreciate the dreaming story, but can you just elaborate a little bit?
So when we talk about our totems, it's a moiety that we talk about. In some cultures, it's a skin group. So in our culture, we have different skin groups. Each skin group has a totem. So as I said, I'm emu. Everyone in my family is emu, everyone. Even Jonathan Thurston, he's emu. So Jonathan's one of my family members.
Oh, is he really?
Yeah.
Can we meet him one day? Invite him to the mosque?
Very lucky. When we talk about our moiety and our totems, our ancestors were able to devise a matrix that determined how we married and also what our totems were. So in my case, I'm an emu and I have the responsibility of protecting that bird, that animal. So each skin group has an animal or an insect or a bird so in my culture, Gungri culture, there are 9, but then that tells me I can marry that person, but I can't marry that person. Mm-hmm. And that's because of the bloodlines. So we, probably similar to the English, I suppose.
Did you have any Romeo and Juliet stories?
Sorry?
Did you have any Romeo and Juliet stories?
There, Romeo there. I had too many relatives where I come from. So I thought, well, if I want to find a husband, I'll have to go somewhere else.
Okay, there's a few other questions here, but I think it's about the health system. What can we do to improve the quality of healthcare? What needs to be done, what could be done for First Nations peoples?
Sometimes it's my own personal experience has been, the Western system has its advantages as well, but quite often we will go home to use our traditional medicine because it hasn't killed us yet. Yeah. We still use traditional medicine, but quite often when we're off country, we accept that there's the Western system of healing, but then sometimes, if I can say that the work that I do is spiritual healing. So in the Western system, my understanding is that they heal physically first, then mentally, then spiritually, if that is one of them. In our culture, we heal spiritually first, then mentally, then physically, because we have to heal the spirit first so that we can come back to a place where we feel that this is our true identity, this is who we are, and we can start to move into those other areas of healing.
Yeah. It's Islam has a similar philosophy
Yeah.
of healing spiritually. So we have the Holy Quran and the teachings and our mode of prayer and our submission to our Lord. So our spiritual nurturing is
Yes.
fundamental, as well as our physical nurturing.
Yeah.
The two need to coexist on this earthly plane. So quite similar. What is dreaming? What is Aboriginal dreaming? That was the question. And it's related to the rainbow serpent.
Our dreaming is how we are connected to everything that is here on Mother Earth. Our relationship with Mother Earth is critical, and our people would observe our children when they were growing up, and I did recognise some of them coming in. So the gift that I was given through my grandmother was just sharing with people what their characteristics are, their strengths and their weaknesses are. So there's one person in particular that I can share with you who's a very prominent person who asked about their dreaming, and I said, well, you're an eagle. What does that mean, Aunty Peggy? So I said, well, an eagle represents power. An eagle also is about helping others that are less fortunate. There's two ways of looking at it. So an eagle is an air element. So we know that when if our dreaming is an eagle, that when we feel that we are in a positive in air, we can feel very rejuvenated, and we need air to breathe, oxygen. When we're in a negative, we could be in an area that is toxic, smoke. Yeah. So we have to keep that balance in life. And in his particular case, I said, well, yours is about flying high above the landscape to see where there are people in need and how you're going to help them. And if you look at countries, there's a lot of countries that have a symbol for an animal or a bird or a fish. And one of the countries that has the eagle is America.
Yes.
So America looks at itself as a superpower, and they look at that symbol and say, yes, that's powerful. But you can only be as powerful as your conscience, I suppose, lets you. So I said, when you are in a negative, you will feel like you've just had the wind knocked out of you. You know you're in a negative.
Yeah, sure.
Okay? But he went to America and he was meeting with some high-profile people as a politician. And I said, when you go onto somebody else's land, make sure that you ask for permission to be there. So he did that. And when he came back, he told me, and he said, but I have to tell you something else. When I got in the car, someone was at the airport to meet me. When I got in the car, I felt something was behind me, but there was no one else in the car.
Amazing.
When he looked in the back seat, there was a picture of an eagle.
Amazing.
And I said, what does that mean to you? And he said, I'm protected.
Wonderful.
So for us, it's how we see ourselves we are just one of those things that are on this planet, but it's how our characteristics can guide us through life. And things like if you're a water element, if you're a fish and you're a water element, you often hear the saying, I can just keep my nose above the water. Mm-hmm. You're in a negative. We have to realise that, fish can swim, but we have to keep our nose above the water. So we have those conversations with children around, we understand their strengths and their weaknesses. But this is something that our people, and I work with a lot of our women in particular, to help them through some of their challenges in life.
Just a question from me, actually, a personal question, observation, actually. I did some studies around the boomerang, and I found some interesting observations that I could make about the boomerang. There's two types. There's one that returns and how that's used to actually push the prey into one direction and get the birds to fly over so that all the animals go to one side. And that's where you get your animals. And then the other is the non-returning one, which is straight. But the boomerang, according to what I've come to know, was developed around 10,000 years ago, somewhere around there. This is what I've come to know. But the thing that I found really interesting was the boomerang is a flight instrument. It's a flight instrument. It returns, but it's flight. And from the ones that I've seen, from the older pictures I've seen, they all seem to carry a very similar design in terms of the shape may vary, but in terms of the technology. So what I noticed was the slightly curved front face. And what I want to share is when the first planes were developed by the Wright brothers, they studied the birds. First Nations peoples have been studying birds for thousands of years, and they studied the wings of the birds. Your crows, for example, curved front face. And physics and science, they discovered that I can demonstrate it, if it pleases everybody, that if you have a curved front face, curved, so that, just imagine that is the curved part of the wing or the boomerang. So when air rushes over it, it creates low pressure on top, but the high pressure is underneath, so it creates what we call lift. So I'll just demonstrate. See how that lifts up?
Yeah.
So the Wright brothers discovered this and they got all the glory. But the First Nations people of Australia already had this technology 10,000 years ago. And they never received proper recognition for it. So a lot of people are not actually aware of this. And I thought, this is amazing. Sometimes migrant communities, well-meaning, would like to, learn and sort of adopt some of the First Nations culture in their art and try to replicate it. Could you just briefly tell us the do's and don'ts? For example, if somebody wanted to do an abstract out of their imagination, but using that sort of dot painting, what are the do's and don'ts? Can we or can't we, or should we just stay right away?
From my perspective, if they try to replicate or copy something in the same style, they are actually disrespecting that person's spirit or the people of that country or that land. So when you see the very large art in some of the art galleries and things like that, they're very specific to the people of that land. When somebody tries to copy that, that is actually disrespecting their spirit. And they know that it's theirs. So I know what my art is. And there's always something that I put in my art that I know. If someone says it's theirs, I'll find it and I'll say, there it is there. Okay. I know it's mine because it's there.
So would you say that there isn't a concept of abstract art? There's always a story.
There's always a story.
So if someone
can do whatever, like Indonesians, I think, have been also looking at copying Aboriginal art for a long time. And then it actually went, a person in Brisbane who had to go to the High Court to stop that.
Yes.
They were selling it off as Aboriginal art, but we knew it wasn't. We could just tell.
Yes.
Just looking at it, we could tell it wasn't Aboriginal art. So it's very disrespectful of someone else's culture to do that. It's like your spirit has been, disrespected.
Thank you, Aunty. Thank you for the wonderful sharing today. I think we have learned a fair bit, and there's much more that we need to learn from you. And we hope this is not a first off, and we will have many more engagements and to receive you here at the mosque. for more cultural awareness and learning and listening?
I think that we will be coming together more often.
Inshallah.
It's good that we can come together and share. One of the things that I'm involved in as well is with the Multicultural Australia,
Yes.
their office in Logan, and so I often get involved in a lot of the other cultures as well.
Okay.
But for us, it's really about an invitation. It's about, so this is like, for me, it's like a big yarning circle, and we can't go into somebody else's yarning circle unless we're invited by the elders. So I feel very, very privileged today to be here, and my husband being invited here today to be with you and share culture with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Auntie. And I can assure you the privilege is all ours. So thank you once again for being with us.
Thank you.
And you're most welcome to come again and again. And we too would like to be invited to a yarning circle that you might hold with the ladies perhaps, or other circles. Please feel free to invite us. We'd love to be there as well.
Thank you very much.